Breaking news from our own Chip Brown. Sources: Jim Schlossnagle leaving Texas A&M to become next baseball coach at Texas. The article was posted by our man Chip Brown over at horns247.com 9 minutes ago. And it's happening. The impossible has happened. The unthinkable has happened. If you thought Texas stealing Chris Beard away from Texas Tech was wild, how about Texas stealing Jim Schlossnagle away from Texas A&M a day after the Aggies lose the College World Series final by one single run? What's up, guys? BK, Brad Kellner. It is an emergency Texas Sports Unfiltered pod. We are live on YouTube. We are live on Facebook. We are live on Twitter. We are also live on the free Texas Sports Unfiltered app. We are going after hours today. And my man Jeff Howe of Horns 24/7, who reported earlier today on his show, It's Only an Hour with Jordan Scruggs, that he believes if there were Vegas odds for who the next coach is going to be for Longhorn Baseball, he said Jim Schlossnagle should be considered the heavy favorite. He said that in the 11 o'clock hour this morning. Off the record, him and I were texting off the air after our shows today, and he said, hey, just be ready. In case some news drops tonight, we should have an emergency episode of TSU in the hopper ready to roll. And sure enough, a few minutes after he sent that text, the Chip Brown tweet went out that, yes, indeed, Jim Schlossnagle is coming to Austin. Are you kidding me? Oh, my gosh. Just prepare yourselves for the epic meltdown. I mean, the monumental meltdown that is coming to the website known as twitter.com. Some people call it X nowadays, but it's coming. Get ready. And oh my goodness, the first time Texas and Texas A&M play baseball against one another. After this news, the National Guard might not be enough to keep Schloss safe. I don't care if the game's in Austin or in College Station. They better bring the CIA, the FBI, the National Guard, all of our armed forces. They're going to need the damn Space Force at that game to prevent Jim Schlossnagle from getting Lord knows what would happen with Aggie fans. But how about that? Coming off of the Aggies' best season in program history, the very next day, not only does the coach leave, but he leaves to take the job at the University of Texas. He goes to the biggest rival. You can't make this stuff up. The Aggie jokes, they write themselves sometimes, don't they, ladies and gentlemen? Oh, my gosh. Look, we all found it interesting and noteworthy that it took as long as it did for Texas to announce that they were moving on from David Pierce, right? I mean, the Longhorn season ended a couple of weeks ago. Chris Del Conte had plenty of time to make some sort of announcement about David Pierce's future, whether he said he's coming back or whether he said he's moving on. But the silence was deafening. And I think most folks around college baseball and most Longhorn fans realized that the silence was not a good thing for David Pierce, and that probably meant a move was going to get made. And you felt like, okay, Texas probably wasn't going to do anything official until they had something in place with David Pierce's replacement. And it turns out, well, I guess yesterday was the day that they had something official in place with David Pierce's replacement. Now, nothing is official from the University of Texas just yet, but I always speculated, and I think most people on TSU speculated that, we won't hear about David Pierce until there's some sort of under-the-table handshake agreement between Chris Del Conte and whoever Texas's next baseball coach is going to be. And, sounds like at some point over the last 48 hours or so, maybe it happened before the College World Series final. Maybe it happened immediately after that game ended. Maybe it happened at some time in between. I don't know when it happened, but it happened. And it's happening. Cue that gif where the guy's freaking out going, it's happening. I should probably know where that's from. I have no idea where that's from. I just see it all of the time. But it is happening, people. Jim Schlossnagle is going to be the next head baseball coach at the University of Texas. And like I think every Longhorn fan said it, if you were going to move on from David Pierce, who had plenty of success in Austin, let's not begrudge and besmirch David Pierce's name right now. Guy went to Omaha 3 times in 7 seasons at Texas, won conference championships, won postseason games, won a lot of games during his time at UT. Felt like, okay, if you were going to move on from a guy who had some skins on the wall, you were going to need to replace him with somebody better. You were going to need an upgrade. And no disrespect to David Pierce, but Jim Schlossnagle is an upgrade. One thing that David Pierce could not do during his time in Austin, he could not make it to the College World Series final. He got close in 2021. Texas lost to the eventual champs, Mississippi State. That was a damn good Mississippi State team. Texas just missed the cut that year, but Jim Schlossnagle was able to lead A&M to the College World Series final, a place the Aggies had never been. And obviously, Schloss had a ton of success with Chris Del Conte at TCU. Schloss was the head coach in Fort Worth from 2004 to 2021. Let's see, 3 Big 12 regular season titles, 3 Big 12 tournament titles when TCU was in the Mountain West. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Mountain West regular season titles, 5 Mountain West tournament titles. And you talk about the postseason success, tons of trips to regionals, tons of trips to super regionals, and some trips to the College World Series as well. How about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 trips to Omaha while Jim Schlossnagle was in Fort Worth, and then 2 trips in 3 seasons to the College World Series at Texas A&M. So 8, is that right? 5 plus 3, carry the 8 trips to Omaha for Jim Schlossnagle at places that don't have a ton of baseball history. And I see my man Jeff Howe in the waiting room right now. Jeff, of course, works with Chip here on TSU, but also works with Chip over on Horns 24/7. And Jeff, I know you're typing and texting away. Do what you got.
Time to freaking be alive, man.
I was telling the people, you and I were texting earlier, and you're like, hey, be ready to do an emergency show. Yeah. And sure enough, you were dead on. You said on your show earlier today, you felt like Schloss was the heavy favorite to get this gig, and I'll give you the floor. It's happened.
Yeah, I'd been hearing from a few different people. As a matter of fact, I said this on our show. This might be the promo that you tweeted out. Basically, it felt like it was done, and it's been done. And, I think what's key here, BK, is the relationship between Schloss and CDC. It's not like they work together. They kind of hung out a few times. They're pretty much best friends. Like they're really tight. And I think Schloss reiterating last night that, hey, when he took the A&M job, in a perfect world, I don't think Jim Schlossnagle would have ever left TCU. But I just think when you look at the financial commitment A&M was getting ready to make and everything that went with that job, I think Schloss kind of had to do it. I think this is an opportunity to, hey, he trusts Chris Del Conte as his boss. He knows whatever he wants, CDC is going to be able to get. And I think what should excite him is the fact that the folks with the money, when it comes to facilities, NIL, whatever, that were either holding back or straight up withholding as long as David Pierce was still the baseball coach at Texas, they're, I think, ready to back up the Brinks truck for Jim Schlossnagle. So if you want to talk about Dish Falk Field renovations, you want to talk about when Schloss wins in the portal. I mean, I think that's, if you're a Texas fan, that's what should excite you for 2025 is he wins in the transfer portal. So again, Chip wouldn't have run this. I knew who he was trying to confirm it with, who he needed to confirm it with. So yeah, it's done. And a lot of people have been, reporting that it's close to done. Pretty much, BK, once I got off the air today is when things started coming together. And right around the time I texted you, once Brent Zwerneman and Kirk Bowles reported from the Chronicle that, and the wording was interesting, that A&M was hoping to convince Jim Schlossnagle to stay. At that point, it was like, hey, all hands on deck. This thing isn't going to stay quiet much longer.
Man, just incredible that one day after the Aggies come up one run short in the College World Series final, they lose their coach. Not just to anybody, right? It's always a big deal to lose your coach, but to lose your coach to your biggest rival who's about to join your conference. I mean, you talk about salt in the wound. You talk about twisting the knife. It's been maybe the roughest 24-hour stretch in A&M sports history.
Dude, if this would be like if Auburn played in a football national championship, and then the next day their head coach left to take the Alabama job.
Yeah.
That's basically what we're talking about here.
It's obviously a little different with football and baseball, but yeah, that's what it is. And I said it earlier, Jeff, like we saw the reaction that Chris Beard got when he went to Lubbock for the first time as the Texas baseball coach. It's going to be all of that and then some the first time Texas baseball heads down to Bluebell Park and Olson Field at Bluebell Park, whatever the order is. Like the National Guard, the Space Force, and everything in between is going to have to be at that game to just keep Jim Schlossnagle safe from the Aggie meltdown that will be inevitable.
I mean, it is. I'm about to go to our board over at Gig'em 24/7, and I don't know if I want to, but it's at this point, it's like the burning car on the side of the highway. Yeah, man, it's it's kind of about what you'd expect it to be. Yeah, man, it's hard for me to put it into words, BK, because I don't know. I don't remember if I talked to you about it. I just couldn't. When I started hearing, there's been smoke about Schloss for the last couple of weeks, and I just couldn't wrap my head around it. You know, and I was kind of in line with, in my head, with some of the things that Kendall Rogers has reported in the last 24 hours. I just didn't think, even with CDC at Texas, I just didn't think there was any way Jim Schlossnagle was going to leave Texas A&M, because anything financially that Texas could put together, you know, A&M would match it. A&M, from a monetary standpoint, would have done whatever it took to keep him. I just think for him, this is a unique opportunity. He can be a coach that gets 3 different baseball programs in the state of Texas to Omaha. And I think there's no question, man. I mean, the pressure's on. I mean, there's no question. Jim Schlossnagle you're hired at Texas to win a national championship. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But he knows that. And I think this should excite Texas fans, because for him to leave, the financial commitment that CDC and Texas are prepared to make to him, to basically give him what he feels he needs to bring number 7 back to the 40 acres, he's going to get it. And it's about to be really, really fun and not that it's not always fun to follow baseball, but dude, look the hell out, man. This thing's going to take off.
Yeah, absolutely. And you bring up a good point. Look, we're not going to be naive and act like money did not play any sort of role in this. But like you said, A&M's athletic department, they make a lot of money too, and they get a ton of support too. So they could have matched or maybe even beaten anything from a financial standpoint that Texas was willing to throw down. But you talked about the relationship that Schloss has with Chris Del Conte. And also, I think it's important to note that there's a new AD in College Station, right? Like Ross Bjork, the guy who hired Jim Schlossnagle, he's now at Ohio State. So Trev Alberts is new on the job. It's a different AD. You still have John Sharp to deal with in College Station. And oh, by the way, you have to live in College Station. Like, there are other factors at play. So, yeah, odds are Schloss is about to become the highest paid coach in college baseball. And a lot of people will just sit here and say, oh, Texas just money whipped him, and that's the only reason he came over. I think you bring up good points. Relationships matter. Obviously, the history and tradition that goes around Texas baseball matters. There are other factors at play here that, yeah, it's ludicrous to think about, Jeff, because I think that was the biggest argument in favor of Schloss staying at A&M. It's like, they just made it to the national championship. Like, Texas lost in a regional. Hell, they lost to A&M in that regional and then got eliminated the next day in College Station. Like, why would you possibly leave a place where you just let a team run away from a national championship to go to that spot? But all of those other factors at play is why this ultimately is happening.
Yeah, it's... And if you need any more confirmation, I'm reading a tweet by Kendall Rogers. And again, dude, there's a lot of people that do a good job covering college baseball. To me, nobody's better than Kendall and Aaron and his guys, his staff over there. Said I spoke to sources throughout the last week with knowledge that Schlossnagle would consider going to Texas. I was told if that happened, Aggie baseball would pay whatever was needed to land an elite coach. A&M, given new ballpark coming / resources, will be attractive. Buckle up, dude. Not just because it's Texas. This is a move that shifts the dynamics in college baseball. Jim Schlossnagle goes to Texas. A&M now is going to have to go hire somebody. Is that Eric Bakich at Clemson? Do they make a run at Link Jarrett at Florida State, even though I don't think you'd be able to pry him away? Dude, that's a really attractive job. And the financial support's going to be there. Okay, so then whoever takes the A&M job, what does that program do? And so and on down the line. So, man, it's the first domino has fallen, and I'm excited. I forgot, my apologies, whoever asked in the gig. Keen Ellis asked, no, I'm sorry, not Keen. Somebody had asked about the roster. Travis Johnson, you'd asked about the roster. It's in a complete situation of flux right now. I mean, what the 2024 Texas baseball team looked like, just take a nuke to it, because it's not going to look anywhere near the same. I mean, look, there are going to be some guys that transfer out. There are going to be some guys that pursue pro opportunities. I think at this point, the guys that were probably on the fence, I would expect Jared Thomas and Jalen Flores to sign at this point. Same with Gage Bame. And you're looking at really needing to really build through the portal. The good thing is, though, you look at what Schloss did year one at A&M, when same deal. Like, you had Rob Childers out, massive roster turnover. They went to Omaha. They had the best run they've ever had in Omaha.
Yeah.
Schloss's first year with a lot of guys out of the portal. And it's not like, I think a couple of things have impressed me about that, BK. One, I don't think people understand the advantages you have as a private school head coach in college baseball. Like, there's a reason Dan Hefner hasn't left Dallas Baptist, right? Because you're 11.7, brother. You can stretch that 11.7 and end up with like 30-something scholarship guys. Like, you can do wonders with some scholarship money. At big state schools, you just can't. The fact that Schloss had the success he had at TCU and has now gone to a big state school and won at a level that Texas A&M baseball has not won at ever, that tells you, okay, yeah, he can go to Texas and it's not smoke and mirrors. He can go to Texas and be the guy that brings the 7th national championship to the program. I mean, I'm struggling for words, because, like I said, I couldn't wrap my head around Schloss coming to Texas, and now that it's on, dude. I'll borrow from Kendall, man. Buckle up.
I'll tell you what. Like, I'm looking forward to Texas A&M football at Kyle Field on the Saturday after Thanksgiving. But hell, at this point, I might be more excited for the first SEC baseball series between these two teams, just to see what in the hell happens when these two teams take the same diamond. It is going to be a madhouse, whether it's in Austin or College Station. It doesn't matter. That's going to be an environment unlike, I'm not sure, anything college baseball has ever seen, Jeff.
Dude, the SEC, kind of like the football culture, the baseball culture in the SEC it's something else, man. It's really different. And, look, Texas fans, it's a knowledgeable fan base. If you're a Texas baseball fan, they respect the game, but it's the energy that an SEC crowd gives you. I mean, we've seen a little bit of it, with LSU or South Carolina comes to town. Those fan bases are a little bit different. Dude, crank that up 100-fold the next time Texas goes to College Station. I mean, dude, Chris Beard needed police escorts going around Lubbock when the basketball team went there. The only trip Chris Beard made back to Lubbock. I don't even want to know what it's going to look like when Schloss goes back to College Station. I mean, dude, all you're missing at this point is whatever the equivalent of like the Jimbo Fisher Christmas tree on the curb would be. Like, you're just waiting for like that image. But man, if you were going to get rid of David Pierce, you needed to swing big, and CDC did. And it's funny, BK. I think you'll hear, and we already had a couple Clemson people post on our message board today. Well, Eric Bakich turned the job down. Okay, well, if it's anything like the search that led to Sark, we know CDC back-channeled a number of different coaches, right?
Mhm.
Mario Cristobal, James Franklin. Like, there were guys that Texas put out feelers for. There was 2 guys that were offered the job. Urban Meyer was offered it while Tom Herman was still the head coach, which was nutty in its own right. But then they offered it to Sark. And that's the same deal this time. I mean, I really believe one guy got offered the job, and it was Schloss.
Yeah, I think, Bakich was kind of the fallback option, and you've been saying this for a couple of days, right? You felt like it was sort of a 3-horse race. It was Schloss, it was Tony Vitello, and it was Eric Bakich. And it felt like those top 2 guys were sort of 1 and 1A, I think, for Texas fans, and who knows what Chris Del Conte's exact order was. But, once Tony Vitello won it all last night, I kind of thought, all right, any chance that he would leave went out the window. And that said, all right, well, can Texas do the unthinkable? Can they find a way to convince A&M's baseball coach to leave, to come to Texas? And yeah, they did. And credit CDC. He's done a great job of keeping his cards close to his chest here. Kind of did that with football. I heard you tell the story earlier today, like the Rodney Terry extension. That didn't really break until it actually broke. Like, he somehow, with all the media coverage that Texas has, he was able to keep this thing under wraps for a long, long time. But yeah, he's been pretty successful. If there's somebody he wants to coach one of his teams, way more often than not, he's been able to get that guy or gal.
And man, Kendall Rogers now reporting that it's a done deal. Everybody's following Chip. Credit our guy Chip Brown, my coworker, 24/7. Chip is here on Texas Sports Unfiltered. Chip and I, like I said, Chip and I talked. Probably about 3:30 this afternoon. Like I said, once the Brent Zorneman report came out, I'm like, all right, dude, this is gonna pop in the next couple of hours. Right around the time I texted you, and Chip and I called, and he had gotten it all but final confirmation. And like I said, I knew who he was needing confirmation from to run it, and for him to run it, yeah, it's signed, sealed, and delivered, man. It's a hell of a time, dude. If you're a Texas A&M fan, like what? I don't know how you process the stages of grief at this point, or if you're just like, if it's just a level of pissed off to where you can't even imagine right now.
Yeah. I don't even know how upset they are, right? I think the grief has just turned into anger at this point, and vitriol and hatred. Right? If it hasn't already, it will soon.
You brought up the beard thing, BK.
Yeah.
And like, let's be honest. I'm sorry if there are any Red Raiders watching this or listening to this right now. Texas doesn't consider Texas Tech a rival. And Red Raider fans would admit anybody but that school. It had to be anybody but Texas. Now you consider somebody that Texas actually does consider a rival, that A&M probably considers their biggest rival. As a matter of fact, I don't think they do. It really is for them, dude. Schloss could have left for any job, just not that job. Why did it have to be that job? And it was that job.
It was. Yeah, and what he said last night after the game, too, like, it was a pretty heated response from Jim Schlossnagle when he was asked by somebody in the post-game press conference about the job in Austin opening up, and are you maybe putting any consideration into that? And he didn't say no. Like, Bucky and I talked about this morning. He was pretty heated, and he's like, when I took this job, like, I never had any anticipation of leaving this job, and it's unfair and selfish that you're asking me right now. He word vomited, Jeff, for like 50 seconds, but he didn't say no. He didn't say, like, I'm staying. I'm not going anywhere else. I will be the head coach of Texas A&M in 2025. Like, all he had to do was say anything along any of those lines, and it would have put this whole thing to bed. But instead, it was just a total acting job by him, and it left the door open a little bit. Like, maybe there's still some hope. I thought it might have been my Texas fan hubris there. Like, it's just wishful thinking. But sure enough, like, him not completely shutting this down last night told us that, no, he was ready to make this leap.
Yeah, not quite to the extent of Lincoln Riley saying, I will not be the LSU head coach next year. Not quite to that extent, but yeah, and the number of A&M people that I saw either tweeting or posting on message boards like, oh, yep, see, Schloss is staying. He's staying. I'm like, I didn't get that. Like, if you just take, like, remove yourself from the situation, for me as somebody who covers Texas, I didn't get that at all. that was like about a statement as clear as mud as you could get, right? Like it wasn't a denial, but it wasn't a yes, I'm for sure leaving either. There was a lot of gray area in that deal. I think, man, for A&M fans, I think what really just kind of sticks the knife and turns it. I know Aggies were upset because you got to remember, man, Vic Schaefer was an assistant for Gary Blair when the A&M women won the national championship. Was it 2012, 2013? I forget the year, but there were a lot of A&M fans that assumed, oh man, when Vic Schaefer's tired of winning big time games at Mississippi State, he'll be the next A&M women's basketball coach. Well, the CDC had other plans, let Karen Aston's contract lapse, and then hired Vic Schaefer. So I know women's basketball probably isn't as big a deal to some people as baseball, but yeah, Texas has two coaches that A&M fans probably feel like should be coaching those sports in College Station.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about. And Jeff, I'll probably run for an hour, so you bolt whenever you have to bolt. I know you've got Horns 24/7 responsibilities and daughter responsibilities. So
actually, you know what? My wife and daughter are out of town doing pageant business this week, so they couldn't have picked a better time to vacate the house.
Congratulations to you, my friend. So I want to get your thoughts on this because you're very close with the baseball program. You go to a lot of the games. You cover every single game. You've been doing that for a long time. I think, talking to you and just the biggest issue that I think has plagued Texas baseball over these last couple of years is not the head coach. It's kind of lack of overall support from the program. Like the reason Texas didn't make it to the College World Series this year, it was not because David Pierce is some sort of horrible coach. Like the roster was not close to the roster that Tennessee had, to the roster that Texas A&M had, to the roster that Kentucky and a lot of the other teams that were playing over the last couple of weeks had. And it just feels like the NIL support for Texas baseball has kind of fallen by the wayside. That kind of felt like the biggest issue with Texas baseball. And I've been saying for weeks, like, dude, I love David Pierce, but it doesn't matter if I love David Pierce. I'm not a billionaire. Like, I can't support David Pierce to the point where Texas is going to be able to get the players they need to get to compete at the highest level. Like, that's why it felt like Texas needed to change more than anything. You talk about getting funding from an NIL standpoint. Like, not only do you get one of the best coaches in the sport, you steal from A&M. Chris Del Conte's phone is probably buzzing off the hook right now, and the Texas One Fund website might crash tonight because of how many people are about to donate because of the double whammy that CDC just pulled off with this hire.
Dude, there's a couple things to say, and I apologize for looking at my phone, BK. I don't want to make it look like I'm not paying attention to you. I am. I just don't like when like my friends text me like, "Oh, what do you think?" Like, dude, I'm working. Like, I'll get to you later. Like, I'm a little bit busy right now. But I had heard from enough people to believe it that David Pierce had little to nothing to do with any NIL conversations that were taking place. Like, imagine that as a head coach. Like, you're recruiting guys, and guys can ask you, "All right, coach, what's the NIL setup look like?" And you can't give them an answer because you're not privy to a lot of those conversations. And yeah, there were some donors and some people in high places that withheld money and didn't want to give money as long as David Pierce was the head coach. I think just to put a bow on David's tenure, because again, you've known Coach Pierce for a while. I've been around him from day one, and I like David a lot. Never done anything bad to me that I can't think of a crossword we ever had. But at the end of the day, like you said, it came down to two things to me that were really his downfall: the portal, not getting what you needed in the portal, and the NIL stuff had a lot to do with that, and pitching development or lack thereof.
Yeah.
I mean, to your point about the roster, right? Go back and look at that 2021 roster that was a walk-off loss away from Mississippi State from playing for a national championship, and compare it to this one. Dude, it's not even close. Like, Jared Thomas, I think, will be an early round draft pick. Jalen Flores, I think, will be drafted high enough to sign. Max Ballou is the Big 12 Player of the Year and an All-American. But go look back at that 21 team. Silas Ardoin's going to play in the big leagues at some point. Ivan Melendez will play in the big leagues. Mike Antico should be playing in the big leagues at some point. Or those guys are going to, Zach Zubia, those guys are going to play pro baseball for a long time. I don't see a lot of that on this roster, BK. And even when David and I met before the season to talk about the roster, he compared it to his first team that, lost in a regional to that Long Beach regional, lost the last 2 games to Long Beach State. They got up 2-0 and ended up losing the last 2 games. And he was pretty blunt. He's like, if we're going to have somebody that's going to – if there's a Cody Clemens or an Ivan Melendez or a David Hamilton on this team, he's like, it's going to be a complete surprise. Like, that's the head coach on the record saying that about his roster. So you kind of got the hint that, man, he's going to have to squeeze every drop out of this orange to get enough juice to even think about getting to Omaha. So, yeah, the roster taking a hit. There's no question. You're going to have some guys on that A&M roster that are going to follow Schloss to Austin. That's just, when these things happen, that's just the way it goes. You're going to have guys in the portal that were probably considering A&M. And I think you got to look at it this way, man. Guys in the transfer portal especially, dude, they're mercenaries. Nobody's making 40-year decisions anymore. You're making 4-month decisions, right? Like, it's all about NIL and opportunities to win big and then have a chance to play pro ball. That's what we're talking about here. And Schloss, I mentioned how he's managed the portal, BK. It's not like he's just picking off the top part of SEC rosters and be like, I want this guy, this guy, this guy. It's not like what LSU did last year to win a championship. Like, oh, we want Paul Skeens and Tommy Tanks, and yeah, you guys, come on, let's go win a title. Yeah. That lineup he had that pushed Tennessee to the brink, he had 2 Ivy League grad transfers in that lineup. Like, and especially without Braden Montgomery, I think that shows you just how good of a coach Schloss is. But yeah, he can win in the portal. And what Chip reported, we've been told he's bringing his staff with him.
I was going to ask.
So I'm assuming that means pitching coach as well. Mm-hmm. So you're about to get some pitching development. I got a feeling, man, I'd be real interested to see which guys stick around and track the development of any guys left over from the David Pierce regime and how they develop from here on out. Because that just stopped, man. Man, I go back to the 22 season. Tanner Witt gets Tommy John in March. He's done. Aaron Nixon completely fell off a cliff. Dre Duplantier had a tough time coming back from TJ. I mean, we saw when Jim Schlossnagle's A&M team eliminated them from Omaha. They just flat ran out of arms. I mean, they got the absolute most they could out of Pete Hansen. Tristan Stevens regressed from 21 to 22.
He did.
Thank goodness for Lucas Gordon. Otherwise, I don't know where that 22 team would have been.
Yeah. You want continuity on your coaching staffs, and you had so much turnover, especially from the pitching standpoint for David Pierce's teams over the last 3 years. And obviously he put a bullseye on his back this season by making himself the pitching coach, right? He got rid of Woody Williams after last year, or they parted ways. That's a very popular phrase for Texas baseball, apparently. Texas had a top 10 ERA in the country last year. Now, stats, I don't think they tell the whole story. Yeah, deceiving. Texas wasn't a top 10 pitching staff in the nation last year, but still, they put up some good enough numbers. And obviously, you saw a pretty big regression from 23 to 24 when it came to the pitching staff. So, yeah, that's the opposite, right? Like, David Pierce obviously had success in Austin. He went to Omaha 3 times in 7 years. I don't know how many coaches across the country can say they've had a stretch of baseball like that. But the problem for Pierce is he chose a bad year to have a bad year, right? Like, it was Omaha in 21 and 22. They were crappy lights away from getting back in 23, but they still didn't. They lost in the supers, and then they lose in a regional this year. Meanwhile, you look at Jim Schlossnagle, Omaha year 1, they didn't make it year 2, but then this year 3, when he's got his guys and everything kind of the way he wants it in College Station, look at year 3 for Sark with Texas football. It kind of feels like that's the time you need as a college coach to really get things the way you want them. A&M has its best baseball season ever, and guys are getting developed. That's the key word. Any Texas football fan knows the problem with the last 2.5 coaches. Development went by the wayside. With David Pierce, development was going by the wayside. It feels like Schloss and his coaching staff, especially Max Weiner, whatever it is, the pitching coach in College Station, it felt like guys were getting significantly better when they were there, and that's super exciting if you're a Longhorn fan.
Like, dude, look at LBJ.
Yeah.
He got you to the supers by throwing a complete game in Coral Gables last year. He's the preseason Big 12 pitcher of the year. And had they had any other viable option, he would have been out of the weekend rotation by the middle of conference play.
Yeah.
Like it just, and I think those pitchers on campus, I think they just need a new message. Chip brought it up today, but last year when we were talking about, okay, who are you going to hire to replace Woody Williams? What kind of pitching coach are you get? Frank Anderson's name got thrown around a lot, but was pitching coach at Tennessee, was former pitching coach at Texas, and those two would have killed each other. Like there would have been a felonious assault in the J. Dan Brown Player Development Center because David Pierce would have tried to murder Frank Anderson or vice versa. They're just two headstrong people, and look, man, it's just like an offensive coordinator that's a former play caller. That's just something David's just not going to give it up. He and I talked about it before the season, BK, and he equated it to like the offensive coordinator in football that's not ready to give up calling plays. He's always going to have his hands in it. He said, it's like air. I need that to breathe.
Yeah.
I just want to be around pitching. And, we talked about it, and he said he didn't really think about the ramifications of it if it went wrong. He was always trying to see the positive, but, basically what I was getting at, and he understood what I was getting at. I mean, there's the kind of move that if it backfires, it gets you fired. And here we are. The guys he talked up, man, Cody Howard, Charlie Hurley, LBJ, the biggest surprise they got, what held this pitching staff together, dude, is Boogie Whitehead. None of us saw that coming. Max Grubbs stepping up and freaking Gage Bain. I mean, and Dre Duplantier, who, believe it or not, BK, has another year. If Schloss will have him back.
That's impossible.
Dre has one. I don't know where he found it, but Dre has one more year left.
Dude, I started UT in 2012, and that guy was a sophomore that year. There's no way he can still play college baseball.
Dre and his brother Gumbo. Gumbo might be gone before, and Dre still has some eligibility left. But man, yeah, the roster has gotten where it's gotten, but Schloss, I have no doubt, can work the portal, get not just the elite bats in here that you need to get in. And what I like about how Schloss put together his A&M rosters, like Texas had a couple of guys like this. Like you look at like Jared Thomas. And by the way, man, if this means Max Blue and Will Gasparino are staying, then that's great because you got one more year at Blue. Will Gasparino's a piece you can build around. Schloss has a couple of guys. His whole nine in his lineup were like that, just like functional athletes, strong guys. Could do multiple things offensively. I think the one thing that I didn't really like about David Pierce's offenses as time went on, you love that they could rely on the long ball. I just think they were over reliant on it. Bunt game, short game wasn't very good. Weren't very good on the base paths. Just situational hit and run. There's just a lot of stuff that was just lacking. So hopefully this ends up being what Schloss can do is kind of reinvent this offense and this program to be kind of an offense that can win games in multiple ways. If you need to outslug somebody, you could do it. You need to turn it into a short game and it's about defense and pitching, you can do it. And it's just, dude, as somebody who's followed Texas baseball as long as I haven't covered it, as weird as it was seeing Gary Patterson and Burnt Orange, it's going to be equally as weird seeing Jim Schlossnagle in that dugout next spring.
Yeah.
It's gonna. I can't picture it. Like I just want to print out like a picture of Gary Patterson in that Texas polo and just hanging on my office wall because I'm like, it just is hey, never say never. Anything can happen. And look at GP rocking that Burnt Orange. But
right,
dude, yeah, it's gonna be weird. But yeah, Johnny, it is a glorious day if you're a Texas baseball fan. Yeah, dude, like there are some. I think there are some Aggies out there that I think the self-deprecation kicked in almost immediately. Like, dude, he's gone. We just lost him. We lost him. He's not coming back. But that fan base is loyal. and really confident and prideful. And the amount of people that I saw, he's not leaving. That's just Texas being arrogant. He won't leave. He's not going anywhere. Only thing he's doing is signing an extension. Okay, all day. I'm just like, okay,
Oof.
all right.
A lot of receipts on the internet that Texas fans are going to pull out when talking to A&M fans over these next couple of days. And look, there were plenty of reasons to believe that Schloss wasn't going to come to Austin, right? He had a lot going for him at Texas A&M, and it felt like that program was on the rise, and almost felt like he could have gotten himself a lifetime contract to stay in College Station if he really wanted it. But
once upon a time, Kirby Hook gave Chris Beard a lifetime contract, as we found out. Those, excuse my language, those don't mean shit.
Yeah, it turns out lifetime contracts don't mean shit. Handshake agreements don't mean shit. Buyouts don't mean shit, because Texas is going to have to pay not only Jim Schlossnagle's salary, but they're going to have to pay a buyout, and that's chump change. Like, look at A&M. They just paid a football coach $76 million to leave. Buyouts in college sports don't matter, and this is further evidence of that.
It's, by the way, the buyout. So it's double. If Schloss left, for the contract states, if Schloss left for an in-state school, it's 2 times the amount of his annual salary, which this year was $1.35 million. So Texas will pay Texas A&M $2.7 million. That's a little bit more than what they're probably going to pay Louisiana Monroe to come here in September and get their heads kicked in.
Oh, man. What do you do with that money if you're A&M? Do you just flush it down the toilet? Donate it. Make a good cause from it at least, but you can't spend that money in good faith.
Maybe Trev Alberts tries to gather morale in the athletic department. You have like a Pizza Friday with that money. Hamburger Friday, courtesy of Chris Del Conte.
Jeff Howe is with me. I'm BK, Brad Kellner. We're live on Texas Sports Unfiltered. We're on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram right now. And, of course, if you're listening on the free Texas Sports Unfiltered app, hit us up on the COTA Text Line, 512-222-9328. Any texts, any comments, any questions that y'all have, please fire them away. We'll go for another 15 minutes or so, maybe take you up to the top of the 6 o'clock hour. The breaking news, of course, Texas baseball hiring Jim Schlossnagle as its next coach, replacing David Pierce. Remarkable stuff. And yeah, I guess another question I have, Jeff, and you talked about Schloss bringing over his staff. Any thoughts on Troy Tulowitzki? Like, Texas fans want him to stay. Tulo's been linked to head coaching jobs around the country, but it's felt like he's liked being here when he's been here. Any inclination on his future?
My Chip has mentioned this, and I've mentioned it too, heard it from multiple people. Tulo's family loves Austin. Tulo loves Austin. And I don't think he wants to leave. And you combine everything I've heard with what Chip has heard, no matter who the head coach was going to be in 2025, Troy Tulowitzki still wants to be around this program. So I have a hard time thinking Schloss would tell him no thanks, but no thanks. Like, we don't need your help. But yeah, if Troy Tulowitzki, if Schloss will have him, they'll work something out to where Tulo will be back.
I think
let me say this about CDC.
Sure.
You think back to when he was hired, and just the cluster, dude, that Texas athletics was through the end of DeLoss and what I'm going to refer to as the complacency period. And then Steve Patterson coming in and, going with scorched earth and burning one bridge after another. Mike Perrin trying to settle things down. Man, you could argue, look, DeLoss did a ton right while he was the AD.
Yeah.
As of right now, I think if you're power ranking Texas ADs in history, I'd probably put CDC number 1.
Wow.
Because every hire he has made, it's been unanimous pretty much that that's who we need to hire for that job. Whether it was Mike White, whether it was Chris Beard, even though it didn't work out, Vic Schaefer, Schloss, Edric Floreal, hiring Bob Bauman to replace you. You got the best possible replacement you could for freaking Eddie Reese.
Yeah.
He's everything that was said about CDC when he came here from TCU, he's backed it up and then some.
Yeah, I mean, he
Yeah.
kind of gave you the AD speak when he took this job, right? Like, we want to be competing in the top 10 in every sport. And it's like, all right, that sounds nice, but how realistic is that? Well, Texas keeps winning directors' cups. This has proven to be the best athletic department in the country from top to bottom. And like you said, these hires, like, good point with Steve Patterson to Mike Perrin, because that was the transition for the last baseball coaching search. 9 guys got raises at their current jobs because Texas couldn't get their heads out of their asses.
This one was guaranteed, regardless of whether Schloss came or not. This one was guaranteed to be better than the last one.
Yeah, I'm with you. It was a total embarrassment the last time Texas tried to hire a baseball coach. And look, I don't think David Pierce was like the 9th choice. I think that's ridiculous. But Texas missed out on a couple of guys, and it kind of became a national joke amongst the college baseball world.
Savage, Tim Corbin, Kevin O'Sullivan,
yeah,
O'Connor,
all that.
No, this time around there was guaranteed to not be any college baseball coaches making hostage-like phone calls from their bathroom while interviewing with Texas for Augie's gig, which I was told by someone who would know that happened.
God, really?
That the interview went that bad.
Oh, yeah. Okay. That's not good.
Dude, wheels off doesn't begin to describe it, BK. And I like Mike Perrin. Mike Perrin's a good man.
Yeah, he is.
But Mike Perrin need to be running a baseball coaching search like I need to be the head of NASA. It just didn't need to happen.
Well, you are a podcast host, which means you could be an NBA coach at some point in the not too distant future. So you do have that going for you.
I'm feeling good about my chances.
Yeah, as you should. But you're right. I mean, it's premature to go CDC over DeLoss, in my opinion. But like, I get it. I get, like, when it's all said and done, if CDC continues this pace and this athletic department continues to do what it has done in these last few years, like, I'm sure some old school Longhorn fans hear you say that, Jeff, and they're like, no way, how could you say something as crazy as that? But the trajectory that this whole department is on right now is maybe unlike anything we've ever seen around here.
And at a time where you're going into the premier conference in college sports.
Yeah. It's a great point, because this was sort of the one sport, like, there are different levels, right? Football, volleyball, like, you go down the list of all of the Texas sports, and there are some that you might be 10 out of 10 in terms of confidence going to the SEC. There might be some you're a 9 or an 8 or a 7. Felt like baseball might have been the lowest on that list, just with this year and with how good the SEC is, getting 4 teams to Omaha and winning its 4th straight national championship. Like, this kind of felt like if there was a sport, Jeff, where Texas fans were like, I'm not sure we're ready to make this jump to the best conference. Yeah. It was baseball. And now it's like, oh shit, no, we're good. We'll be fine.
Yeah. It's pretty freaking incredible to think that, I mean, we've had coaching searches. You look at, the football coaching search to replace Mac Brown. We talked about the last baseball search. There were times where, and I was guilty of it too, just not knowing any better. Because at the time Mac got hired, dude, I was in middle school the last time Texas had a football coaching search. At that point, you just assume, oh, dude, Texas is going to go get whoever they want. Well, we knew that wasn't the case, right? As we found out. Now, everything everybody assumes about Texas, where they think they can get whoever they want. Yeah, they're pretty much getting whoever they want at this point.
Yeah, slowly but surely. My UTSD.
Other than men's basketball, which I love Rodney Terry to death. Great guy. But there's a lot of stars that had to align for RT to get his job. Now, here's the difference though. Like, is Rodney Terry like the absolute best coach you could hire? Probably not. But nobody hates Rodney Terry. Nobody dislikes Rodney Terry, the guy. That basketball program, that building, that Tito's facility, they got a good culture in there. So that part you don't worry about Rodney Terry. That's why you made the change with David Pierce, because I don't want to say it was a bad culture. It was just a culture that needed a recharge. It needed a reset. Yep. This is one hell of a freaking way to reset it, BK.
It is. And we've got a Tennessee fan, I think, with us today. Congratulations to you, sir or ma'am, on your first national championship in program history. Good job, UT Junior. You thought you were getting Tony V. Look, I don't know. Maybe we'll find out in
The
time.
national champion for less than 24 hours, dude. I saw some SEC fan bases like they're like the hate for Tennessee is so strong. They're like, you're making me root for Texas A&M, and I really don't want to do that. That's what other fan bases were saying last night.
Yeah, I think most people were rooting for a bomb to be dropped on TD Ameritrade Park in Omaha, so neither side had to win.
Like everybody, it's the Aggies. As long as I've been alive, it's been, it's like Lucy's going to yank the football out from under Charlie Brown, and he's going to fall down. It's going to happen. This is kind of what A&M's been. And even as that was happening, I'm like, oh, I got to watch Tony Vitello celebrate a national championship.
Oh, man.
Diminishing returns, pretty much. Like, was this really worth it? I don't know. I did think about it, BK. Was it really worth it? I don't know.
Well, a couple of questions that we'll never know the answer to, right? Number one, if A&M won last night, would Schlossnagle have taken the job in Austin? Or, maybe there was something in place, a handshake agreement in place, regardless of how that final went down. But maybe he's like, oh, no, I just won a national championship here. I don't want to leave after doing that. And then number two, if A&M did win the national championship, would Tony Vitello have been the top target for Texas? Or was he ever the top target for Texas in this cycle? Those are alternate universes that we don't live in and questions that may go unanswered until the end of time. But now we've got the man of the hour, the man of the day, the man of the week, the man of the month, the man of the year. Yeah, congratulations are in order for the man who broke the news, Chip Brown of horns247.com, and of course, Texas Sports Unfiltered as well, had the first story. Chip, congratulations to you on the break, and welcome to our breaking news show, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, what a day, what a week. It's Tuesday, and it feels like it's been 10 days since that game between A&M and Tennessee. But yeah, I mean, yesterday was kind of a weird day with Texas announcing through statements from Del Conte and David Pierce that that they had parted ways. On the day of the College World Series championship game, and then Schloss's post game press conference comment where he kind of dug in and said, I took the job to never have to take another job. And then today it got hot and heavy and hectic. And, I was told that Schloss had met with his players and so, then it was just a matter of getting the confirmation that that Schloss had, listened to A&M officials, I'm told, and, indicated to them, what his decision was going to be. And now, as if 100-year rivalry with each school mentions each other in the fight song needed to be elevated before Texas even joins the Aggies in the SEC. Here we go.
Man, Chip, I don't know. Again, like I called you probably about 3:30 when it looked like, hey, this is fixing the business is picking up. So I don't know if you've had time to dig into this, but it looks like there were a couple of employees. Chris Park, I believe, was one of them. There were some people pretty close to Schloss in that athletic department that when Trev Alberts came in and tried to trim the fat, that it seems like that's kind of one of the things people are pointing to now, at least the chatter that's out there, is that's one of the things that really kind of made this decision a little more palatable for Schloss. Is there were some people he was close to in that athletic department that were part of those layoffs. I don't know if you've gotten around to figuring out what did or didn't go right for him at A&M, but I think it's really interesting now that some of that stuff is starting to come out.
That's interesting. The sources I talked to said that the relationship with Schloss and Chris Del Conte was the absolute deciding factor, that those two are close. I mean, they're friends, which, I mean, they've worked together for 8 years at TCU, and and then remained close. And the alignment, the fact that, and Jeff, you mentioned this in the hot board that we put up at horns247.com, that, Ross Bjork hired Jim Schlossnagle. Bjork left to take the same job at Ohio State in January. And then Trev Alberts came in, and I'll look into that, what you mentioned about, because some of the cuts that Trev Alberts made at A&M, you pay a football coach $77 million to go away. You're going to have to make some adjustments. But I think the Texas side of this felt really confident.
Yeah.
Kind of well before today, but you don't, A&M was going to make their run. And so it's just, again, 100-year rivalry. And then this, the day after, A&M gets to the precipice of the national championship. It would have been their first national championship in a big 3 sport. I don't know what they claim. They claim 3 football national titles, but anyway, I'm not trying to throw dirt on the Aggies, because they were totally fired up about their baseball program. So it's a new chapter, though, in this rivalry that will certainly not fade anytime soon. Anytime the Longhorns show up at Bluebell Park, Jeff, what that place is like. So
I still say if Hitler was roaming this mortal world the last time you won a championship, it shouldn't count. That's my cutoff. That's my cutoff.
Okay with that. Yeah, Chip, Jeff and I were saying, look, the Saturday after Thanksgiving for Texas and Texas A&M football at Kyle Field is going to be incredible. But how about the first matchup on the diamond between these two teams? We don't know yet if it's going to be in Austin or if it's going to be in College Station, but whenever these two teams do play each other, especially if it's in College Station, that's going to be an atmosphere unlike anything college baseball has ever seen.
Well, and I shouldn't even say this. I need to confirm this, but I heard Schloss never bought a house in Bryan College Station. He's been there 3 years. So,
yeah, he said he left his family in that answer he gave last night. I'm like, you left your family? Like, you didn't. I get wanting to live in Fort Worth over wanting to live in Bryan College Station, and there's schools and other factors at play. But like, that little nugget was like, they stayed the whole time. You've been here for 3 years. You had this big money contract. It didn't feel like you were going to leave, and you left them behind.
Yeah, it's, I know for a fact that, and I said this at SEC meetings, that, Jim Schlossnagle is always, and his family have always loved going to Austin, the lake life. His son loves live music. And not that that's everything, but it's, it is one of the most desirable cities to live in. And Jim Schlossnagle, does anyone remember when, and God bless Mike Perrin, when, they moved on from Augie and ultimately hired David Pierce, Del Conte got Schlossnagle's, revamped contract done, and then they took a picture and tweeted it out, and but I was told that Schlossnagle always wanted Texas. So it's a fascinating day for sure.
By the way, gentlemen, based on A&M, Texas A&M Barstool, and some of the TexAgs comments that I'm seeing on the Twitter machine, the meltdown has commenced, and it is about as raucous or as glorious as you would assume it would be. It's yeah, man. They're not happy.
Well, I will say this. I was told that, like I said, I think there was a pretty good feeling from the Texas side even before Monday. And then, then Schloss makes that statement in his post-game press conference, which caused, some consternation. And then there was a period where Schloss was not returning calls today from, Texas people, but that was because he was meeting with his players and then meeting with A&M brass. But still, it's, Schloss is trying to make good with, the people there in College Station. It's not going to work, but I'm also hearing there are A&M players who are ready to move, and I reported he's bringing his staff with him. So it's a for baseball fans, it's, Schlossnagle has been to the College World Series 6 times in the last 10 years and got to the championship this year. So we know he's, got a great eye for talent, that he's a good developer of talent. He likes he likes big, strong, lads everywhere with speed and who can power arms. So, I've heard he's a little prickly at times, but hey,
what baseball coach isn't, Chip?
Right? Oh man.
I've never met a baseball coach that didn't have at least a slight case of the red ass.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, though, watching both teams over the last 3 days, A&M and Tennessee, Texas doesn't have that. You got guys coming out of the bullpen throwing mid-90s with high spin rates, wipeout sliders. Texas hadn't had that. That 2021 bullpen with Quintanilla and Nixon and Witt, they had that. But it's been a while since Texas had dudes like that you could just throw in 7th, 8th, 9th inning and it's boom, boom, boom. It's lights out. It's over.
Well, and that was what was David Pierce's undoing. The constant shuffling on the staff and then the decision, 2 years ago, and I've reported this 2 years ago, Del Conte said, I'll write the checks for Frank Anderson and Tulo. And I was told that, Frank Anderson said, I get total autonomy, right? And David Pierce was like, well, I still want to have a say. And Frank Anderson was like, okay, I'm out. And Del Conte, he remembers that. And so then Woody Williams gets hired. Then Woody Williams gets fired. And Pierce takes over the pitching, and it's not good. The highest ERA since 1999. LeBaron Johnson didn't develop, and I heard that Pierce changed their routines.
He did.
It's like, what are you doing? You don't need to mess with stuff. You just need to tinker and make sure that guys. And that was part of the question I heard, Jeff, was that he would tell guys to, man up and throw strikes. Mm-hmm. He wasn't teaching them how to throw, pitches with proper technique. And it just, there was no plan, I was told.
Right.
That the plan had fallen apart. And so that's why, if you look at it on paper, he's been to, College World Series 3 times in the last 7 years, but it was going this way.
Yeah.
The last 3 years, even though they were a better set of outfield lights at Stanford, away from going to Omaha for a 4th time, it was, Del Conte had seen enough and was willing to. They're probably going to end up paying, Schloss $3 million, and I'm hearing assistant salary 600,000, another assistant salary 400,000. I mean, Texas is making the investment, and good for Schloss. He's got the leverage. It's his time. Just like Sark. Wow. Nick Saban's retiring. Oh, wow. Okay. Your leverage just went pew. Oh, you reached the College World Series championship series. Oh, your leverage is pew.
And Orlando, what Chip and I talked about it. Chip had mentioned it, and combined with what we both heard, man, Tulo and his family, they love Austin. And like I said, as long as if Schloss has a spot on that staff, dude, Tulo would be more than happy to be back in Texas. So
I hope Schloss makes room for the guy. I hope he, gives him serious consideration. I know that Del Conte has told Schloss he thinks the world of Tulo, so we'll see how that goes. And if things had fallen apart, Tulo was probably going to get serious consideration because,
wow.
I think there were some coaches who would come work with him, pitching coaches, whatever. And he, so I think.
No, you're right, Chip. I don't think you and I ever talked about it, but if it got past one of those three, Vitello, Schloss, or Bakich, dude, all bets were off. Like if it got past the big three, then you're starting from scratch at that point. At least we were. CDC wouldn't.
Yeah. Let me take a second here before I ask a couple of more questions of you, Chip. Let me plug y'all here. Plug y'all's website. I don't like the phrasing of that first one. Horns247.com. If you're not a member over there, you are missing out. We've got two of the best in the business on screen right now. And Chip is one of the best insiders and has been covering Texas for a long, long time. This is the great content you get. I've been a member over there for a long time and still happily am one. So if you're not a VIP over there at horns247.com, go over there because this is the type of stuff you get before anybody else gets when you're on that site. So y'all make sure to do that while you're here. Chip, I'll ask you this. You said going into Monday that Texas felt pretty good about this answer from Schloss. Any guesses on when these conversations started? Were they happening before Texas's season ended? Did they happen right after Texas's season ended? Any idea when sort of first contact was maybe made between these two parties?
Well, I think there was an issue with between David Pierce and a player, at least one that happened at the end of the Big 12 tournament. And that became a big source of consternation for Chris Del Conte and the his department. And it smacked of Pierce pressing and feeling overwhelmed and kind of channeling his frustration in a way that he shouldn't have. He didn't swing at anybody, but it was not good. I guess we can say it now, but I don't know. He got into it with a player.
That's how I've left it, Chip. Yeah.
Yeah. He kicked the player off the team. The players said no. And Pierce reinstated the player the next day. And so it was not good from that point forward. I think at that point, Chris Del Conte was starting to get some wheels rolling, trying to get a feel. Because you know how Chris Del Conte works. He doesn't typically make a move unless he's got the answer already. And that's why I thought Monday was a little weird. I thought it was going to happen. I thought the announcement on Pierce was going to happen today. And that way Schloss never gets asked that question last night, but it happened the way it happened. And so, yeah, I think that was the timeline.
Yeah, that was kind of my fear, right? I was talking to both of you guys off the air. It's just like, oh, did the timing of that, is that going to be the thing that screws Texas in their pursuit of Jim Schlossnagle? Is that going to impact the way the decision goes down here? And it seems like it didn't, but it obviously made for a Oscar-worthy performance at the podium last night for Jim Schlossnagle. And I guess this one too, Chip, I don't know if there's an answer to this right now. I don't know if we'll ever find out an answer to this, but do you think Schloss was Texas's number one target? I'm sure other conversations were had with other candidates, but do you think this is the guy that CDC had his sights set on once he had decided that David Pierce was no longer going to be here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. That was his guy. And I was like, God, there's no way he's going to leave A&M for Texas, right? I mean, isn't he going to go for someone else?
Yeah.
And sure enough, I mean, what better way to kind of get your baseball program going and also weaken one of your rivals? I mean, so because now A&M, where do they go? Who do they hire? This is crazy, but I heard from a source, watch out. If Vitello might go to A&M, and I was like, "What? This is bonkers." So, I don't know what A&M's doing, but that was. I don't even know how to describe that move. It's a flex beyond flex, I guess. But relationships matter. Alignment matters. Someone asked me, I did a chat yesterday on Horns 24/7. Someone asked me why Texas football was meandering in the desert for the last, 14 years. I said, bad alignment of leadership from the top down of the university. And that's a concern at A&M right now. You've got John Sharp as the chancellor, but you've had a revolving door of presidents because they all answer to Sharp. I mean, Sharp basically runs the president's office, and then Ross Bjork leaves. And so if you're, obviously Mike Elko, there are coaches who they're going to go to A&M no matter what, because it's a great opportunity. It's the SEC. It's big time. But if you're one of the guys who's among the highest paid in your profession, and you're going to the playoff, or in this case, the College World Series, 6 times out of 10, then you get to make the call. And that's where I think we are in this situation, because he knows what he's getting in Chris Del Conte, and with Jay Hartzell and Kevin Eltife right now. I tell Texas fans all the time, savor this right now, this alignment of leadership, because this is why everything's going so well at Texas.
Yeah, Jeff said it earlier, Chip. Like, if he was power ranking ADs in the history of the University of Texas, he might put CDC at number 1 right now, with just the hires he's made and the alignment and everything that he's done since taking over here. I mean, it seems crazy to think that could even be a discussion this early into Del Conte's tenure, but and the work that he's done to this point. And he said it, right? I want to be in the top 10 of every sport. And I'm like, okay, cool thing for an AD to say, but how realistic is that? Well, baseball
now he's saying top 5.
Yeah, and baseball was kind of the one that was like not quite there. And then you go out and get one of the best coaches in the country, a guy who just played for a national championship. Like, you talk about putting your money where your mouth is and action speaking louder than words. This dude has done just about everything right since he got here.
Well, you think about it was. Oh, go ahead, Jeff.
No, you're good, Chip. You're good.
Well, $750 million in facility upgrades in 5 years. It's never been done. It's never been done. And it touched every sport. Remember, he got Eddie Reese his outdoor pool. He got the indoor facility done for baseball. He got better, he got softball, got training facility upgrade. Soccer and track got new locker rooms and weight room and player lounges. And So every sport got something before the $250 million renovation of DKR. So, the Moody Center gets finished, the practice facility for basketball and rowing. It's unprecedented. And now the indoor football practice facility in a time of NIL. Actually, let me take that back. The brilliance of getting all that done when it happened was pre-NIL. Like most of that was pre-NIL, because now you're asking your donors to come through for NIL and obviously facility upgrades. It's going to be $75 million for the new football practice facility. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of donors needing to write checks, and they're going to have to upgrade Dish Falk. I mean, that now is a relic. I mean, they what do they seat? 6,000 plus, and Ole Miss seats 12,000. And if you go stadium for stadium in the SEC, it's most of them are 12 to double digits. So
don't say you want to get rid of the turf, Chip. Don't say it.
Del Conte can't wait to get rid of it, but
yeah,
it's
I think
you can't just tear it up. They just put it in. I mean, not just, but he'll tear it up as soon as he can.
The easiest thing to do is all those food trucks along the third base concourse, where you've got some nice spacious area. Yeah, that's about to all be seating right there.
Yeah,
that can get you to five figures pretty quick. But
yeah,
what I was going to say a minute ago, Chip, I followed it, and you were right there for it. That kind of golden age of Texas athletics from, let's say, 2002 to 2010. Times were good. Times were great. And I think we can all agree in the big three in a lot of sports, there was still some meat left on the bone. I think what CDC setting Texas up for now is to make sure there's no meat left on that bone by the time this run is over. I mean, it's football, men's basketball, women's basketball, baseball, softball. I mean, I think CDC wants to look back decades from now at this kind of 10-year window, whatever it is, and say that was the peak of Texas athletics, was this run right here.
Yeah, and it's you look up, we're 5 years into the decade, and it's trending. It's trending. I mean, obviously you got to win a football national championship to get on the same stage as that first decade of the 2000s. But Sarkisian, he's borderline obsessed and is making the right moves. We'll see about basketball. I mean, that was a touch and go situation. Rodney Terry got hot at the right time and got the job. And now he's got to prove he's the man and prove he can get this team to a Final Four, trend in that direction. Women's basketball is right there.
Right there.
They're ready to make a national championship run this year. They've treated the NIL that way. And they're recruiting like crazy. They've got Aaliyah Chavez, the number one player in the country in 2025 in Lubbock. Texas is in. I mean, that's going to be crazy, because she's, she might have Caitlin Clark type game and appeal, which makes her, unbelievable from an NIL standpoint, and all that. But it's trending. It's trending in that direction, Jeff. I mean, you're right. And that's powerful stuff, because Alabama fans have had it so good for so long. They don't even know. Yeah. 17 years of Nick Saban, 6 national championships. And it's been, do I go to the SEC title game, or do I go to the semifinal, or do I save my money for the national championship game?
Yeah.
And now you got a 12-team playoff. So it's going to be even more expensive depending on, if you're one of the seeded teams and get a bye.
Yeah, I think the last time I saw something like this that I can remember, BK, I don't even know if you remember this, but Kansas loses in the 2003 national championship game to Syracuse. Hakeem Warwick blocks that shot. And I can remember watching it on TV like it happened yesterday. Bonnie Bernstein's in the hallway interviewing Roy Williams, and the North Carolina job had just come open. And even during the game, all these rumors are coming out about Roy's going to Carolina. And same deal. He loses a national championship game. Bonnie Bernstein probably doesn't want to, but there's a producer here going, ask him about Carolina. And his line was, I could give an S about North Carolina right now. And, well, like 2 days later, Roy Williams is the head coach of North Carolina.
Yeah, that was the worst kept secret in college basketball when that went down. The writing was on the wall.
You got to have that in your back pocket. You guys have to say, hey, tonight's not about me. It's about these players. It's not about that question. It's about these players. And leave it at that.
Yeah. But I'm not going to defend what Jim Schlossnagle said last night because it's a bad look. And look, Aggie fans would have been pissed regardless of if Schloss said that after the game. But the fact that he said that and then left for Texas the following day makes things worse. But I mean, there are a million instances in sports history, guys, with players and with coaches and with executives.
Nick Saban.
Exactly. Saban with the Dolphins.
Not going to Alabama.
I am not going to Alabama. He was as staunch as you could possibly be in that take. And then, boom, maybe a day later, all of a sudden, he's the next head coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide. Like players who are about to be free agents in sports. No, I love it here. Like, you're going to ask me about that? I'm focused on being here. I want to be here my whole career. Then all of a sudden, another offer comes from somewhere else, and they go. Like, people just don't learn. I get it. We're fans. We get upset over all kinds of things that negatively impact our team, but this is going to be something that's held against Jim Schlossnagle forever. And it was a tough question in that situation. I agree, Chip. He probably should have answered it differently, but he is just, exhibit 1 million, and there will be another million more in the future of sports of coaches or players who say this exact same thing and end up leaving for another job right after. Just how it goes.
Yeah.
I mean, Tommy Tuberville was the head coach at Auburn like 24 hours after he said, the only way I'm leaving Ole Miss is in a pine box.
I didn't realize they had that many pine boxes there.
Yeah, well, I mean, as we've learned, BK, Senator Tuberville is not exactly the most reliable person. But
all right, guys.
Get this.
Yep.
Man, I got to start working on a transfer portal tracker because that thing's going to be fast and furious before too long.
Yeah, Jeff, I'll give you a final word first before, Chip, I hand it to you and we sign off. Any final thoughts? I know on y'all shows tomorrow, and I know over at horns247.com, y'all will be all over this, but final thoughts for our breaking news podcast tonight?
I credit David Pierce for, leaving Texas baseball better than he found it. I mean, that program was pretty broken when Augie left, and David did what he could, ran out of gas at the end. But if you were going to get this baseball program, and look, I've always said, man, there's two sports on that campus. As much as we love football and all the other sports, really three: volleyball, men's swimming and diving, and baseball. The expectations for those three are just different than everybody else, and they should be. And it's pretty clear we're hiring a coach to bring number 7 back to the 40 acres. We want that 7th national championship. This is the kind of move you make to go do it. This is Chris Del Conte basically saying, hey, everybody says we're Texas. We throw our weight around. We'll money whip anybody. All right, then let's go beat Texas. Let's go do that. And Texas is doing that. And I feel infinitely better about the future of Texas baseball than I did on June 2nd.
Awesome. Chip, final word from you.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of keep coming back to this. Relationships matter because this is seismic for Texas to hire Jim Schlossnagle away from A&M one day after A&M plays for the College World Series, and relationships matter. That relationship between Chris Del Conte and Jim Schlossnagle is the reason that Schloss is going to face the music on this. And once he settles into Austin, he'll be fine and it'll all, calm down. But right now, today, after everything he'd just been through with that team and what it meant to that school, this is seismic. And it was the relationship between Chris Del Conte and Jim Schlossnagle that is making this happen. And Del Conte's been he's been a laser beam in his coaching hires, and it's showing up all over the place. Edric Florial's already won a national championship, women's outdoor title a year ago. Mike White's played for 2 national championships, finished runner-up twice. Those are Del Conte hires. Vic Schaefer's been to the Elite Eight 3 times in 4 years. So, it's moving. It's moving in the right direction, and Del Conte wants all the programs at Texas to be top 5 and to be competing for national championships. And rowing, can't forget about rowing. Dave O'Neill, he was hired before Del Conte got here, but that program got a giant, they got the top floor of that Tito's practice facility, right, Jeff?
The Tito's facility, man. I'm just, man, at this point, like, you could put the Tito Beverage Center, just slap a big Tito's logo on the side of that thing. Just F it. Hey, I'll say this too, Chip. You mentioned Mike White. I was in Oklahoma City for the softball championship series, and I thought it was, he's kind of gathering his thoughts and everything. And he goes, one day I'm going to be the other coach, not going first in this press conference. I hope that happens for me one day. So there, we talk about women's basketball being close, man. Softball's right there too.
Yeah. If Nigeri Kennedy doesn't seek to break the NIL bank, and wants, OU thinks they're getting her. Texas has beaten her twice. I'm not saying, anyway. Yeah, I mean, they're right there, and they've got the Salmon kid, one of the top pitchers in the nation, as a freshman coming in. So Mike White, who knows pitching, he was a softball pitcher. He's got that thing going in the right direction.
Amen. A monumental, incredible, improbable, comical day for Texas Longhorn baseball, as Jim Schlossnagle is the next head coach of the Longhorns, leaving Texas A&M a day after they lose the national championship to Tennessee. Guys, thank you all for jumping on. Chip, congratulations again on the break. I know you guys have a million calls and texts and emails to respond to and stories to write, so we'll let y'all get to it. Of course, catch Jeff Howe on It's Only an Hour with Jordan Scruggs tomorrow right here on Texas Sports Unfiltered from 11 to noon. Chip and Zay tomorrow afternoon, and every weekday afternoon from 1 to 3. Bucky and I will get things started from 8 to 10 tomorrow morning. Wall-to-wall coverage of Jim Schlossnagle being hired.
Fozzie Whitaker will be co-hosting tomorrow with me.
Jackpot.
Hey, by the way, guys, breaking news, Texas just got a 2026 4-star wide receiver commit for football. Chris Stewart out of Shadow Creek just committed to Texas. So, hey,
get over to horns247.com. There's a 50% off promo. Get in. Come on.
It is a buffet, and Aggie tears are being served. Just come in, just dive in and get you a whole bunch.
Beautiful. Subscribe over there if you haven't. Subscribe here if you haven't. Like this video, and stay tuned for more. Y'all have a great night, and all of us will talk to y'all tomorrow. Welcome.